Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to the first day in palette week, where every single day for 7 straight days I will be posting some sort of palette themed content, and I'm very excited to kick palette week off by talking to you guys about my favorite indie eyeshadow palette from every indie brand that I own. I really hope that I didn't miss any indie brands from my collection. If I did, I'm so sorry. And the other thing that I will say is if I own only one palette from an indie brand, normally I wouldn't include the palette, but I just want to show the love that I have for indie. So there are some brands that I only own one palette currently, and I'm still sharing that palette with you today. So if you're interested in just talking about indie brand eyeshadow palettes, if you're looking for some recommendations, maybe you want to dabble in indie but you don't know where to start, hopefully this video will help you out. So if you're interested, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project painting content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I'd love you to consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. Let's start with, and I'm going to try and go as much as I can in alphabetical order. I feel like I need a little bit more shimmer on the lips. By the way, I don't think I've done this video in the past. I know I ranked every indie eyeshadow palette that I owned, so I'll leave that video somewhere, but I don't think I've done this video. If I have, I'm so sorry. And you know what, things change over time, preferences change, you like different colors sometimes. So anyway, starting with Adept Cosmetics, my favorite palette from Adept is my Menagerie eyeshadow palette. I thought about going with Flying Fiddles because that is more of like a twist on neutrals, and it's a palette that I feel I can reach for more easily on an everyday basis. Like, that is a palette I feel like I could create work appropriate. I say that loosely because work appropriate is going to be different for everyone, but at least for me, I feel like that one for more like everyday looks, I could create more everyday looks. But there is something just so special about the Menagerie palette. I absolutely love this. I do not reach for this palette enough, but this shade right here is just like my perfect blue pink shifty shade. I mean, that is like a drool worthy shade. And then same thing with this like teal shade. I just, oh, it's so freaking beautiful, not to mention all the other shades in this palette. So I really don't think you can go wrong with Adept. They have an incredible formula. I really feel like they do their duochromes and their shifty shades. They do their special shades right. So many indie brands do. But Adept, I really think if you find a color story that speaks to you and you are just looking for, it's a very easy formula to work with too if you're a beginner. I highly recommend Adept. I feel like this bang is longer than the other. All right, moving on to Blend Bunny Cosmetics. I do only have one palette from Blend Bunny, but I just wanted to share the palette that I do own from them. It is the Surge palette, and I knew I had wanted to try indie, or sorry, try indie. I knew I wanted to try, what are we talking about? Blend Bunny for a long time, and I really just could not decide what palette I wanted to pick up. Ultimately, I ended up picking up Surge because I love a pop of neon, and I really just wanted to have these neons in my life. And I will say I do not regret it one bit. I've had so much fun creating looks with this eyeshadow palette. I really do feel like this eyeshadow palette has stretched me outside of my comfort zone. I've tried doing cut crease looks with this palette, and I've really had a lot of fun with this one. I'm really impressed with the mattes from Blend Bunny. I feel like their mattes are so easy to work with, and sometimes I feel like mattes are where indie lacks. So I definitely recommend, again, I've only tried one palette, but I'm very pleased with the Surge from Blend Bunny. Next up is Bella Beauté Bar, and this was really difficult because I love Bella Beauté Bar so much. In fact, I feel like I'm getting enough palettes that before you know it, I'll be able to do like a ranking all of my Bella Beauté Bar palettes. But for me, my current top favorite has remained the same, I feel like, is the Basic Witch palette. I think this is such a fun palette. This shade did break on me, unfortunately. It was a really beautiful, pretty unique purple to my collection. I again am so impressed with not only the special shades. Bella Beauté Bar really has some very unique special shifty shades in my opinion, but their mattes are so good. I was really hesitant to play around with some of like the purples in this palette, but I created this like blue, sorry, not blue, this purple and green look. I'll post it over here that I absolutely loved, and I just have so much fun with this palette. I think it's such a fun color story. I start to be like, I really like especially love this special shade, but I'm like, with every special shade in this palette, I absolutely love. And even dipping into this with like a neutral look, but then dipping into this for like one or two of the special shades, I have done quite frequently this year, and I'm just a huge fan of this palette. All right, next up we have Cosmic brushes, and I currently own 3. I have another Cosmic brush palette on its way to me, and admittedly I have not yet dipped into the Cool Trills palette, but for me my current favorite Cosmic brushes palette is the Neutrals palette. I just think this is such a fun take on like a neutral palette, but yet you're still getting like some pops. Not only are you getting like a pop of green, you're getting like this really beautiful duochrome shifty like red to red brown greeny sort of shade. You have mustards, and then you also have like mauves and purples on the bottom. Like this really does kind of cover your bases, and I've had so much fun playing around with this palette. I also think Cosmic Brushes has such a good formula. They definitely are like increasing their prices, and as much as I want to like get mad at it, I'm also like, okay, but like $38 for the quality that you offer really is honestly a steal still. So highly recommend Cosmic brushes. Honestly, just if there is a color story that speaks to you, I'm so impressed with their mattes as well. Yes, their special shades are also great, but I think sometimes I just do not expect indie matte shadows to perform well. And the first experience I had was with the Muse palette, which I think was under $30, and so I really wasn't expecting a lot from the palette. So good. So really do love the quality of Cosmic brushes as well. Cosmic Beauty, I believe now. All right, next up, the palette that I have on my eyes, Jessa Myrix. I have a new favorite. This is very new to my collection, but I am so utterly impressed with the Jessa Myrix Lightwork Volume 6 palette. I think if you are like on the fence with indie, but you want to like just kind of know what things are about, but maybe you don't want to order from an indie website, maybe that's just not something like you trust in this moment, I recommend starting with Jessa Myrix. Jessa Myrix is really like my first introduction, I feel like, to really shifty duochrome or multi-chrome shades, and definitely kind of sparked my love for now a bunch of indie brands. This is such a fun 18 pan palette. It's all magnetized, so you can move things around. You can actually take out these palettes and you can stack them on one another. Like the packaging with this is just so innovative. And then this mirror you pop out and it stacks on top, and you can like take it on the go. I have a whole dedicated review to this in case you're interested in just a little bit more about this palette. I know it is a pricey one. I'm wearing white sweatpants, which I think is like the most dangerous thing. Like, why did I order white sweatpants? Oh, because I wanted to order every comfort sweatpant there was. Highly recommend, side note. Anyway, this is just so beautiful. And you can get it at Sephora. So there is like, you know, with Sephora, it's just like a little bit more of like a safer route. Like if you have issues with it, like you can return your, but like there's just, it's a safer route, I get it. So if you're looking to dabble, I couldn't recommend that palette enough. All right, next up I have Dieverune Cosmetics, and for me it is their cute little 6-pan Dewdrop eyeshadow palette. I think this is such a fun complementary palette, and for me with Dieverune, I definitely am more interested in their special shades. They make like their holographic shades, their shifty shades, like they are so impressive, but for me they still have room to improve in their mattes. So to have an all like special shade palette that like I'm so happy with the quality in every single shade, I think it's just perfect. I think this is such a cute fun little palette, and if you're looking for just a small, you just want a small companion palette with some fun indie shadows at like a reasonable cost where you're not paying like $25 per single shadow, I would definitely recommend checking this out. Okay, Ensley Rain. I definitely want to do an like ranking my I definitely want to do a ranking my Ensley Rain palettes before the end of the year. Like I definitely want to do that, but currently I think it's so hard. I believe my top favorite is still the Cold Moon. There is just something, this is my first Ensley Rain palette, there is just something so special about this color story. I do love a cool toned moment, and I just love this palette. It's such an easy palette to just do like 1 or 2 matte shades and then one of these special shades all over the lids, and it just is gonna be so impactful. I absolutely love the shade Storm Fairy. It's this really beautiful like blue silver holographic shade. Love it so much. And I just like the different varieties of the like more muted cool tone shades that they have. It's so hard because I love all of my Ensley Rain palettes, and honestly, if there's just a color, like pick a color story, pick the one that you like the color story the most, and you will not be disappointed. I'm so impressed with Ensley Rain. I feel like Ensley Rain and Bella Tayar, but probably Ensley Rain for like my top favorite indie eyeshadow brand. I realized I already screwed up my alphabetical order. For Alter Ego, my favorite palette is the Canyon palette. This is such an oldie but a goodie. I personally do not own the Natasha Denona warm, like the bronze midi. And this works just perfectly. Like, I don't feel like I'm missing something in my collection. Now, usually I end up like already owning the palette that Alter Ego is duping. So oftentimes I just like to have the original, but with this, I mean, their quality is really good. I also own the Artemis palette. I really love their quality. They recently sent over the dupe to the I Need a Nude, and I actually really want to test that one out because I think that I'm just curious about their formula, and that I feel like it's going to be a good one. But for just warm brown looks, I think this is such a beautiful palette at a more affordable cost. I love the metallics in this too, like the shade Cougar and the shade Coyote I think are so good. They have quite a few different dupe palettes this time. I feel like they dupe Natasha Denona the most. So if you are interested in a Natasha Denona color story but don't want to pay the prices, I highly recommend checking out the Alter Ego website. Fantasty Cosmetica, I currently only own the Druid palette. The Enchanted Autumn, that palette is on its way to me, and I'm definitely interested in like every Fantasy Cosmetica palette. I just think like the color stories are so fun and unique. This is the Druid palette. I love this eyeshadow palette. I will say these two shades did come broken, but I just easily repressed them in, and I haven't had any other issues with them like breaking on me. And thank goodness, because they're so beautiful. These shades on their own or layered over top of one another, I think just are so beautiful on the eyes. Kind of like that perfect, like this is like that perfect like green teal red shifty shade, like one of my dream shades. And then same thing with this. You guys know I love like a blue and a blue green. I think they're so beautiful. I love the grunchiness of this palette, and I definitely recommend Fantasy Cosmetica. This was their first palette, and I can imagine they've only gotten better, and I'm already so impressed with this. I'm so excited to get my hands on the new palette. So my current favorite is this one, but maybe that'll change in the future. All right, for Glamlight, I have not purchased, well, I take that back. I did purchase the Glamlight Kiss palette much earlier this year. Still haven't even tried that out. But I haven't purchased a ton from Glamlight lately. I don't know why. Like, there's not really a good reason why. I just haven't purchased a bunch from them. But still my favorite, still my reigning favorite Glamlight palette is the Ice Cream Dream palette. Glamlight does make a great formula. Again, I'm so impressed with not only their mattes, but their metallics too are just so punchy on the eyes. I think this is such a fun color story, and one that's pretty unique to my collection. Like, I definitely don't have like these shades amongst my collection, and I always really enjoy reaching into this palette. I have so much fun creating looks with this one. So my top favorite from Glamlight would be the Ice Cream Truck / Dream. All right, next up I have itsBel Cosmetics, and I do have two palettes from the brand, but I haven't yet tested the like Under the Sun one, which is so stupid. It's such a beautiful blue color story. Why haven't I reached for it? I love blues. So naturally I'm gonna go with this one. This is the Flare palette, and this is again kind of like one of those companion palettes. It's a 9-pan all shimmer palette, and I was really just so impressed with all of the shades. I love the shade Morganite. It's this really beautiful pink shifty shade. I also love Rosewater and Citrine. And after using this, I kind of just like ordered this one off of a whim. I hadn't really heard a lot of people talk about it, but it popped up in like my shop app, and I was like, ooh, I want to try another like indie brand. So I purchased this with very low expectations and was really quite pleasantly surprised. This shade right here is such a beautiful cobalt blue. I really need to pull this out and play with this one more. But really, again, if you're looking for just like a palette of like shimmers, this might be a way to go. All right, Klarity Cosmetics, I only own one palette from. It is the So Amazing palette. I believe they've either discontinued this, or this now comes in a mini with smaller pan sizes. I will say for me, I've really reached into this palette mostly for the like metallic shades. I do also have quite a few Klarity single shadows, and I do really like their single shadows. My favorite shade in this palette is Don't Be Shellfish. I think Klarity, their quality is fine, but I definitely would like direct you I would direct you to a different indie brand if you're looking to get into indie. I just feel like there's better formulas out there. This is definitely something that I picked up before I really grew my indie collection, and I did really like this at the time, but I definitely think there's indie's come so far. I think there's better than Klarity personally, but that's just my opinion. Next up, I have Lethal Cosmetics. I don't have a ton from Lethal. My favorite is they don't have the names on their palette. I think it's the Metamorphosis. This is what this looks like. I love the color story. I will say my one complaint with this palette is I don't feel like there is like the longevity that I was looking for. I will also say I own the Wildflower palette, and in terms of quality, I actually think the Wildflower is better, but I really love this color story. I love the kind of like teal brown. I love the shade Enchantress, this really beautiful pink. I was just a little bit disappointed by, like, I felt like specifically like the metallic slash special shades just didn't last on my eyes more than like 6 to 7 hours, and I was like, I don't love that. But I do think Lethal makes a great formula. I'm really impressed with my Wildflower. I wanted to shout this out because I do like the color story more, but this one's lacking just a little bit in quality. I screwed up my alphabet again. Going back to Glaminatrix, I feel like it should come as no surprise. This is my either first or second palette from Glaminatrix, but I've been obsessed with this palette since I got it. I don't know why they don't bring this palette back. I feel like so many people have FOMO over this palette. I got this off of like when they re-released it, but I know they brought like the Nocturnal palette back in a mini and they updated the formula. Like, why are they not bringing this back? I feel like so many people would purchase this palette. What I love about Glaminatrix formula is their mattes are definitely a little bit more buildable, not so pigmented right off the bat, which I think really helps me, someone who struggles a little bit with being a little too heavy-handed. Their metallics are so incredible. They're so punchy on the eyes. If you don't like the metallic, I probably wouldn't recommend their formula, but I think this is such a beautiful neutral palette. You've got cool tones, you've got, well, mostly cool tones, but I love that you have not only browns, but you kind of have this green if you want to go the green direction, and then you also have like the mauve shades. So freaking pretty. Love this palette so much. One of my top favorite palettes in my collection. Also think I'm out of order. Anyway, we're going in terms of my alphabet. For Kaleidos, we know it's the Sashimi City. Again, one of my top favorite palettes in my collection. I understand this is just a 7-pan eyeshadow palette, but it's so stunning because these like lid topper shades are just so beautiful. This is like one of those like pink to gold duochromes. That's like one of my favorite types of shades. And then this lid topper almost has like a little bit of like a teal slash green iridescence to it. And I get compliments so frequently when I wear this palette. Every single time I wear this palette, someone asks me what's on my eyes, because the sparkle is just like, they just sparkle. They just sparkle. They're so pretty. I don't think you can get this anymore, but honestly, they should bring this back too. All right, next up we have Menagerie. I only own 2 palettes from Menagerie, but I really love the Killer Purr palette. I think it does have a broken mirror. I think one of the things I love so much about this is the shade Maine, which again is kind of one of those like pink to gold duochromes. I think that's so pretty. I also love this shade Lioness, and I think it's just like a fun grungy color story. Personally, I don't think Menagerie is like the highest quality indie brand. I do really like their special shades. I think they have beautiful special shades. I do have one single in one of their special shades as well. Their mattes could use some work, but I do, again, really like their metallics. But definitely not a brand that I'm like keeping my eye on like I am like Bella Beauty Bar, Ensley Rain, or Glaminatrix. But my favorite from them is the Menagerie Killer Purr. Okay, I know everybody loves Nomad. I personally, like, I like them, but I definitely think there's higher quality indie brands out there. But what they do, like, I love that they're a destination indie brand, so all of their palettes are based off a destination. They do incredible marketing around this, where they do like guess the next destination when they're getting ready to launch a palette. So like, For that, I like love, but I definitely, in my experience, I've only tried 3 palettes. There's room for improvements within their formula. But my favorite from them is the Ghost Town palette, and I just love this color story. I will say I really struggled with the blues, which is really disappointing because I love blues. One thing that I do really like about this palette that's a little bit different than some of the other palettes that I've tried from Nomad is the metallic formula is almost like that cream formula that is truly just like so metallic on the lids. It's absolutely beautiful. I just feel like sometimes their mattes are so firmly pressed, and in their Safari palette, some of their shimmers were too, that I just find them a little bit difficult to work with. I still think this is a really beautiful palette, and if you have your eye on a destination, just know I feel like there's better quality out there, but it's definitely not like, I think you're gonna be able to work with it. And for me personally, the Ghost Town is my favorite. Okay, I'm not sure if Rowan would be considered an indie brand, but I had to shout out the 1111 palette because I'm just obsessed with it. I love the Rowan quads. My daughter got into my 1111, so I repurchased it immediately because I love this one so much. 4 cream shadows that are so beautiful and they make a statement on your eyes. I just really wanted to shout that one out. I know they're expensive and they're not gonna be for everyone, but if you like cream shadows, check out the Rowan quads. Next up, I have Simply Posh, and I've only tried one palette, or I only own one palette from them. It is the Coastal palette. One thing that I will say that I love about Simply Posh is the way that they lay their palettes out, where it's just like kind of like, it just like cohesively, I love the way they lay their palettes out. I haven't finished testing every shade in this palette, but what I have used, I've been really impressed with both the mattes and the shimmers. The shimmer shades, oh, they're so stunning, so gorgeous. I'm definitely interested and curious to try more from this brand. All right, I have 5 palettes left, and so in no particular alphabetical order. From Odins Eye, I was going between the Merry Christmas and Stone and Rock, but I landed on Stone and Rock because this green shade is truly one of the most unique green shades in my entire collection, and I love green. So if you wanted to try something a little bit different, I really like this one. I have been warning that I think Odins Eye, like, I don't know what is going on with their matte formula, but something is happening and it's not good. They need to like go back to the drawing board and like redo their matte formula because it's not good in many situations. So I do warn you of that. Same situation with this. There's a couple of matte shades that were just a little bit difficult to work with. Still love Odins Eye as a brand, and I do still get excited about their launches. I'm definitely still interested in the brand. I just wish they would tweak specifically their mattes, but I love what they do with their packaging, and overall I do really enjoy the brand. I just think that they need to work on their matte formula. From Sydney Grace, the only palette that I own is the Tiny Marvels, but truly the quality in this is so good. I love this color story. The mattes are so easy to work with. The metallic shades are so smooth on the eyes. They're not going to be like this chunky textured shade, but they're so smooth and so metallic. They really, really make a statement. This shade Scarab is like one of my favorite blue brown shades in my entire collection. Same with Fire Butts, and these two mixed together, impeccable. Great quality. Again, my only palette from Sydney Grace, but truly you cannot go wrong with that one. Okay, the Teramoon's Space Chemistry, I was personally not impressed with at all. And if you're interested in anything from Teramoon's, I actually recommend just picking out a couple of single shadows from them. I actually feel like the single shadows, at least that I bought, are more reasonably priced, around like the $8 range. But this palette, like the mattes in this, absolutely awful. And then I also just feel like I really struggled with some of these to like stay on my lid more, like longer than like 5 to 6 hours, and to me that's just like not acceptable. Now I do still think there's some really beautiful shades in this. I love the shade Moonwater. I think that's so stunning and really just adds something to a look. I love the shade Light Particle for a yellow inner corner. Solarium is also really beautiful, but for me, my recommendation for Teramoon's would just be pick out a couple of like single shadows that you like and go that route, because this was like in the 80s. It's way too expensive, at least in my opinion. All right, What's Up Beauty, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated indie brands. Like I feel like not enough people talk about What's Up Beauty. I have tried all 3 of their palettes and I love all 3. So for me, this really just comes down to the color story that I like the most. And for me, that is the Dragon Eye palette. I love the shade Scales in here. I actually just love all of the shimmers. Like I feel like every shimmer is like kind of what I'm looking for in that realm. Like I love this ethereal shade Fly. Fierce is a really fun warm green, like every shade. This is such a beautiful palette. Both mattes and metallics are just so beautiful. The one thing I will say about the metallics in this palette is that they are a little bit more flaky, which I think was intentional. So just something to note, but they are so impactful on the eyes. And then I'm going to wrap it up with Unearthly Cosmetics. And for me, I love the Sorcerer's Smoke palette from Unearthly. And what I love about this is it's, again, kind of like a twist on neutrals. You can go a really neutral direction with this palette, but it has greens, which I love greens. And I've said many times on my channel that Unearthly, just their special shades are just so smooth, yet so impactful on the eyes. It's like, I can't even describe how beautiful they are on the lids. They really just pack a punch, make a statement. And again, with Unearthly, I'd really just, if there's a color story that's speaking to you, I would say they are also a top indie brand, in my opinion. After that, you guys, those are all of the indie brands that I own. Again, I hope I'm not missing anything, and my top palette from each brand. I would love to know in the comments below your top 3 indie palettes. Let a girl know, or just let me know what your favorite indie brand is. I would love to hear from you. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch this video and for supporting me and my channel, for supporting Palette Week. I love you guys so much, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye.